Welcome to this hobby of ours, this edition of Watch Yapping, where we impose upon another person's schedule, drag them onto the show, and learn a little bit about their watch journey. And today's going to be a special one for me personally, because we're going to be speaking with Scott from Watchistry, also the author of the Marine Nationale book, one of our favorite watch books. And he became a fast friend, and it turns out we know a bunch of people in common, which is always super duper cool. So without further ado, let's welcome Scott to the program from Watchistry. How's it going, Scott?
It's going great, Dee. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for making the time. You're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. We met in the middle, more or less, and so excited and jazzed to be speaking with you. If you followed the channel, you will know that if it were not for him, we would not have this 1001 Watch Designs book available at hobbyofhours.com. I've thanked you privately. Now I'm thanking him publicly. If it were not for you and your work, I would not have been able to do my work. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really glad you found the video on how to make a watch book.
It was I was a ship at sea with no heading, floundering until I found that video and I said, "Oh, I can make a book too. Scott told me so." But so grateful for that. And I come to know about you and your work from TGV on the Urban Gentry, who's been sharing this book of yours for years, since it came out, I believe, in 2020. And I love watch books. One of the things I review on my channels are watch books. And to have an author on the interview is going to be amazing. Amazing. So thank you once again for your work and taking the time. For those of you playing along at home, we're going to hand the mic over to Scott in a moment. He's going to give us a little bit of his watch journey leading up to his obsession with Tudor Marine Nationale watches, and then how he got into the book, how he's going to sell me a couple of them because he's got way too many, and then his strap project, which I have got adorned on the Tudor FXD left-hand drive. This is made by NDC Straps. Jacko, shout out. And I became friends with Jacko recently through the Paul Thorpe channel. So, like the comedian Stephen Wright said, it's a small world, but I sure hate the pain. So, without any further ado, the stage is yours, sir. Looking forward to hearing a little bit about your watch journey.
Yeah, thanks, Dee. Yeah, my watch journey started maybe about 13 years ago, around 2012, 2013. I was turning 35 then, and decided somehow this urge popped up in me. I'm like, it's time to get a real watch. And so I went to the internet and started looking around, and pretty quickly decided on a Rolex Explorer 1016 was the one I really wanted. It took a while to find it. I was obsessed with finding one for my birth year in 1977. And that was an interesting journey in itself, like learning, well, okay, what does it really mean what does the year of a watch really mean? Is it the year it was made, the year it was sold, and depending on the watch, when the movement was made or when the case was made, like I needed to be a little bit more flexible. So eventually landed on one from 1974, which was beautiful and just hit me just right.
So you went with the age-old advice of condition, and maybe let go of the birth year a little bit in favor of condition. Exactly.
Right. And it was a good decision. And sure, I'd love it if one just that extra little cherry on top of something to do with my birth year. That's great. I'm a sucker for that. I know some people are like,
I think we all are.
And I think you just got to be loose. I think I want to admit to myself that, that's kind of cool, right? Yeah. And then we can compare who's aged better, me or the watch. Right?
And that's that's wow, 1016. He didn't go to Macy's for his first watch. He went to the wild west of vintage Rolex. So congratulations on that pickup, brother.
Yeah, well, thank you. And actually, if I can, just for a second on that, I mean, that was my first big watch purchase, and as you know, those things aren't cheap. And so before I went there, I found kind of an Explorer homage by Time Factors. They have like an Everest watch.
I know. I was gonna say they're the Everest folks.
It's a little bit larger, at least the one I got, than the 1016, but it was a few $100s. And I said, you know what, like, let's start here, see if
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got it, I knew right away. I was like, okay, I gotta have the real one.
Yeah. That's a smart way of going about it. And I've done the same thing. There's a company called Mark II, which is MKII, Bill Yao, who he started out as a Seiko modder and then started his company. And he makes a lot of, I don't want to use the word homage because it tends to describe the lower end ones. His is more of a tribute because he does special stuff with them. He's throwing ETA movements in them. And he had a nice one of a 40 that I owned briefly. And I ended up going with the more modern area. I also, like you, desired the 1016. But by now, it's unobtainium. I mean, the amount of money they go for versus what you're getting is just, it's out of bounds for me personally. But you picked one up, and was it 2013 you said? So you fared a little bit better.
I think so. And yeah, I think it's great. And I'm actually, as the journey is kind of coming back around full circle, I'm finding myself picking up more of those tribute watches, homage, just getting back to the roots of having fun and not being priced out or too precious with the watches, which is actually like one of the things I like about military watches compared to civilian watches, right? In that the military watches, they've often lived a life. And, I don't have to worry about putting that first scratch on it because it's already, whatever it's been through,
I found that in the book because as I was strumming through, because I pulled up some fun notes and observations, and I remember reading that, and it's like, yeah, that's a good point. If this watch was in a war zone, it could certainly be all right dangling out the side of his Porsche as he's cruising along the PCH. Do you still have the Porsche that's in the book?
I do. And I'm hoping to drive it a bit more this summer.
Yeah, well, yeah, summer's coming around, but that's an air cooled, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But I've it's a car that when I have the opportunity to drive it, it's really about just relaxing, and it's not like something I'm gonna jump into a bunch of traffic with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I prefer to be on the back roads and just short little jaunts.
Yeah, no, I'm a car guy as well. I had a 96 BMW 328 convertible. I had it for 17 years, and I bring it up because my mechanic was mainly a Porsche guy, and he was always trying to get me into a 996, and I'm like, no. And but he became like a surrogate father to me, so that's how I know a little bit about your vehicle and the others from the period. Fabulous design, and if you're a fan of the channel, you know we love us some Porsche design around these parts. Yeah. All right, so you've got your 1016, you've got your Porsche, you're cruising around California. How on earth did you find military issued watches? I see the military version of the FXD pop once in a while, anywhere from 12 to 15K. I see some of the Omega watches that were issued to SAS, SBS pop 15 to 20K. And last count, he has 9. Count them, at least 9. Actually, 4 years ago, he had 9 Tudor. How did you, first of all, do you still have 9 or do you have more? And where on earth did you find them?
So I have 9 Tudors that they're all in the book. 9 Tudor mill subs. I have one additional Tudor 7016 that's not in the book, but I post it on Instagram sometimes. It has a really nice cratered style. It looks like the surface of the moon. Turned out really well. Like, just sometimes these age and they don't look awesome, and this one happened to be one of the ones that aged really nicely.
It looked good. Cool.
But yeah, so I think as I was getting into the watch world, obviously, I might have thought naively that, I'll get my 1016 and then I'll move on to the next thing. I'm like, no, I was hooked, right? And I'm pretty sure I was, soaking in all the watch content at the time, and came across Hodinkee, and Hodinkee would do these posts once in a while, just like, just because, right? And they would put some cool watch that I didn't know anything about because everything was new then. And one of those articles was about a Tudor submariner issued to the French Navy. And it had this awesome picture of the watch, of course, but behind the watch, the watch was sitting on this really cool bit of paperwork. And I was like, what the heck is that, right? And I came to learn more about it, and this is what we call a decommission paper. So this was a piece of documentation that when the watch left the military, it was this particular one had been sold at a government auction. It came with this little hang tag on it that kind of told you a little bit about the watch. And it told the model, the serial number, and then most importantly, which particular military unit or base or submarine it had been issued to, which blew my mind.
Unbelievable provenance. I mean, my goodness. I had no idea that they decommissioned watches in such a fashion. Now I understand where you maybe got some of that paperwork, because I was going to ask you, there's so much of that stuff in the book. I'm like, is he in the Congress Library going through archives? Like, where did that come from? Well, it wouldn't be ours. It would be in the French Congress Library, but yeah.
Yeah, so that really, I think that extra bit of information, because most military watches that I had known initially, you might know, oh, this was a watch used by the U.S. Army, like full stop. That's all you know, right? Yeah. But with the French watches, it turns out that actually, if you have the right paperwork or you do a little bit of research, you can find out which unit it was issued to. And maybe that's a commando unit, right? Or maybe it's a particular base, or a submarine, as I mentioned, or a minesweeper, or, that kind of archaeology, that treasure hunt continues after you get the watch. And so to me, that just spoke to just many interests in my heart. And so I that's how I got started. I said, okay, I need to get one of these. And so I reached out to Ross Bovey, also known as Tudor Collector, has a great site, all things Tudor, really great guy. And at the time, he was like the go-to person on French Navy issued watches, and still is. Right. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, Ross, I'm looking to get one of these. Do you know of one for sale? And he connected me with a guy, a great guy called Paul, and we had a great discussion, and a little bit back and forth. The watch was mine, and I had my first one, and it was a blue 94010, issued in 1977. So I got my birth year.
Wow! Congratulations!
Scratched, yeah, and it's kind of the main one in the book feature.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. That's look, Scott goes hardcore. He does not mess about. He was not on eBay.
Well, you have to look all over the place. I mean, at the time, so after I got that first one, again, like I should have probably known better, but I was like, okay, well, I did all this research on this one, and now I want to put it to use again. And so let's find that next one. Well, I know they had blue ones, but they also had some black ones, right? Yeah. And let me see if I can dig up a black one. And then they not only had the snowflake dials, but they had some with more, I call it daggers, so a little different dials. So Houdinki put out another video with Graham Fowler, who is a great collector of military issued watches. And I think they had a video called the 13 mil subs of Graham Fowler. And that video just put me into overdrive. I was like, 13, like, I can do better than that. So take that, Brandon, and
challenge accepted.
So I on the Tudors, I stopped at 9. I felt like that was plenty. But, as I started digging into these, I was searching for the Tudors, but then I kept coming across other brands, and that didn't really get as much play or attention. And brands like ZRC, or there are even issued Doxas or Aquastars, or just so many other brands. And so I started to pick up some of those. And eventually when I got to 34 watches issued to the French Navy, I said, I probably should put together a book on this stuff, because I had pulled together information that was out there in web form, pages, random posts in French, I don't speak French, so I was doing a lot of Google Translate.
Yeah.
But I had pulled together this information. I thought I should put it out there in one concise form and really make the book that I wish had been out there when I first had got started. So
That's absolutely brilliant. And just because I wrote down some of the other names, Longines, Auracost, obviously Doxa, Triton, Breguet, coming back to Breguet, Casio. Funny enough, I've got a Navy SEAL buddy. All he has is Casio. And the generation of the teams before him, those were the guys who got the Rolex subs. He got a Casio. And I mean, it's a good Casio, but yeah.
Did the guys before get Tudors, right?
They may have. I just remember him bemoaning not getting the Rolex, but I believe there is some Tudor history in the U.S. service. Luxia, La Fourbon, Benchot, and even a Tag. That Tag 980 that's the Dalton Bond watch, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. The night diver. It's like a full lume dial. It's beautiful.
Yeah. My buddy on Instagram loves that watch. He's hunting that watch. But
I mean, they're great watches, and there are a few models of that too.
Yeah, good stuff. So, odd man out. Breguet Big Eye. I will pop up a photo. This was not a French dive watch. This is a French aviation watch. Has no business in Scott's collection. There is no room. You can't run that underwater. So, plus, Scott, let's be real. It's taking up $5,000 of your money when that money could be put to something else, like Porsche repairs.
Yeah. Well, that watch it is actually issued to the Naval Aviation Unit, so it does have the Marine Nationale tie. So kind
tight,
of that. But,
barely making it across the finish line. You know, the funny thing is, if and it's not 5,000, that's probably, I'd have to add a 0 to the end of that one. But the funny thing is, if you go down that chrono road, you thought you had fun chasing Tudor MN dive watches. Like on the channel, you know, we love us some Vixa Type 20 Hanhart. I showed this to him earlier. Gosh, took me forever to find this. This is like 95% of the Steve McQueen watch, which is what I was hunting. You know, the Hanhart 417. TGV released one in collaboration with Hanhart. I know Felix at Hanhart, fabulous company. But if you ever feel like you need something new to hunt, by all means, we welcome you into the world of military chronographs.
Well, thank you. Yeah, actually, that was one time. You know, there may be a book on Type 20. I have the photos for it. I just haven't had the time to sit down and write it. But I did post a video. Yeah, okay. I posted a video. It's on my YouTube page called All the Type 20. All the Type 20. And I have a few Type 20s, and I borrowed some from my friend to kind of round it out.
Awesome.
And there's a video that goes through pretty much all the Type 20s. And at that time, I took a bunch of photos, and now I need to just write the book. But there was like maybe 13 or 14 different models covered.
Yeah, count me in for that. All the links to Scott's stuff will be in the description, whether it's to his website. Check that out. It's got some super cool MN gear there. But also these very specific videos we're discussing. It's great stuff, so I will put individual links as well.
Thank you. And you know, speaking of your watch on the big side, I think as I'm sure you'll put up, like on the back, it's got its own story, kind of engraved on the back, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's got maybe 14, 15 stamps on it when it was serviced. Which, if we think about watchmaking, and you know, if you've ever taken the back off of a watch, you've probably seen some writing in a Sharpie on the back or some inscription, but this is like stamped into the metal. These stamps are not going anywhere. And it's a funny thing, because when Scott was talking about his passion for learning the journey, the life of the watch, he verbalized it about the same way that I felt but couldn't verbalize it. And one of the reasons why I 95% of the time only buy pre-owned And I will just sit there and look at it and obsess over trying to discern, Walter Mitty style in my head, where did this come from? This has been around longer than me. Or with the case of the Porsche design, we've been around just about the same time. But it's like, it's haunting, absolutely haunting. And what he's doing, getting all that provenance, he's filling in more of the story. I'm just sitting on the couch, having a glass of wine, pretending I knew where the thing came from.
Yeah, and that provenance is exactly, I think, what really spoke to me. And I feel like there is an opportunity for us collectors to somehow document our portion of the story of the watches we own, and that's really what Watchistry started out, aiming for, was that, hey, for the French Navy watches, there was like this pretty well, not totally complete, but pretty good amount of provenance that you could know something about the watch's history. Like, why don't we have that for our watches, for civilian watches, right? And and so it again, we'll see what the future holds in terms of how that project manifests itself. But I still hold that out there. There's some opportunity for us to, as owners, during the time that we have a given watch, to document some of the cool stories that we might have with our civilian watches, and then pass that on to the next owner, so that 100 years from now, this is the watch D was wearing when he released Watchistry, or something small like that. But but back to the VIX, on the back, for those that don't know, on the chronographs, what's really cool is that these were used by pilots, and it was a critical instrument as part of their flight gear. And so its precision and it being in a ready state of service was very important. So the FG marks would have a date. It'd say FG, then a date. And FG in French, I'm not going to pronounce it right, but it's fin de guarantee, or kind of end of warranty, end of guarantee. It's kind of like Jiffy Lube when you go to get your oil changed. Make sure you come back by this date. So if you're a pilot and you're strapping your watch on and it's past May 1st, you're taking your life in your own hands. It's on you. So you go get a watch that's actually, has a few more months of accuracy left on it, or at least, guaranteed.
When you said that, I almost died laughing. I laughed, but I almost died laughing. I had to contain myself. I was just picturing a watch with 15 Jiffy Lube stickers, one on top of the next.
That's how you do it, right? You got to leave them up. That's part of your history. You
provenance.
It's like old cars. You see that sometimes if you find it, and if they've got 30 old Jiffy Lube, you're gonna leave that, on there because it's cool. So over time, these watches wasn't uncommon for them to be in service for 20, 30 years, and you'll see that whole log of stamps on the back, and it's like, and you can, on the back of yours, it looked like there were a number of
this
them
was,
on.
in any likelihood, this was worn by French fighter jet pilots, probably flying F1 Mirages, maybe, now probably not into the Mirage 2000s, because that would have come later, but this was a fighter jet pilot. I have another watch that's in the other room. I'll have to show it to you sometime. It's the Leonidas CP1, which is the predecessor of the Heuer 1550 SG issued to the Bundeswehr. When Heuer bought out Leonidas and more or less choked them out, took their designs, and the name disappeared. But this was the first one issued to Italian Air Force. I tried looking up what planes they had in '64. I didn't get very far, so this may have been a helicopter pilot's watch, but also a flyback chrono. Gorgeous piece. So I want to go on the record as saying, I will definitely buy your Type 20 book. So if that's inspiration, because I love me a good watch book, but on my favorite chronograph, yes, let us have it. But I think you've got a different project in the works. Before I forget, this beautiful strap from Jacko at NDC. I think Scott still has a few of these. How many do you have? Are these still available for sale, buddy?
Yeah, well, it was great to work with Jacko from NDC Straps. Just for those that don't know, NDC Straps uses the original, genuine material that Well, let me tell you about it. So back in the
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
the divers of the French Navy, typically the watches, the Tudor submariners that they received, they weren't issued on bracelets. They were issued on straps, probably like Perlon style wheat and woven strap of the time in the late 70s. Uh, but over time, some of them fashioned new straps out of excess parachute rigging gear, this elastic type material. And NDC straps uses that material from the supplier, right?
Yeah,
And
the actual the French military overstock.
and it really, again, it's like an elastic material, very resilient. It looks great with the watches. This one's on a Marine Nationale issue Doxa. It's a little bit wider than 20 millimeters, maybe 22. And so it's got some give, so it fits great on the
Yeah,
FXD, and it just as equally on a vintage sub.
yeah. So it's got, because of the nature of the material, it's it fits on a 22, it fits 21, I think, down to 20. Jacko and I were exploring that on Paul's feed that one time, but it's infinitely adaptable, and it's got the super cool Marine Nationale logo on this edition. So get to watchistry.com while you still can.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that project's underway, but I also I follow your Instagram, and I've seen that you're reaching out, trying to get some photography from other Marine Nationale owned watches. I'm hoping to get a sympathy vote. I did some really cool photography of this watch during the I was gonna say apocalypse, the eclipse, and so I'm hoping that I can get just a little bit of space in the upcoming book, a little mention of Hobby of Hours. But tell us about that new book that's underway, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So in my first book on Marine Nationale watches, called Marine Nationale, has 34 watches and timepieces issued to the French Navy, and they're all in my collection. So it was a lot of fun, but it was super expensive to make because I had to buy all those watches, right? And if I wanted to add more, I realized, look, I can't buy all the watches, and
Yeah.
why don't we crowdsource this, right? And so the thought is to put out to collectors of Marine Nationale watches out there in the world, send me some photos of your watch, the serial number, the details, what you know about it, and I will include it in my next book. And I'm trying to kind of build a reverse register, if you will, of all the watches to the French Navy, because it just doesn't really exist out there. So why don't we make it from the observed examples that we know are out there? And already the response from the community has been awesome. I have, I think at last count, maybe 37 submissions. So that's more than are in my first book out there. I'm hoping to get like to 100 plus, and before we kind of push ship on the book. But have a Marine Nationale issued watch, please submit it. I'd love to include it in the book. And I think it'll be fun for the community. One, fun to get your watch out there in a published work. Two, like adding to the knowledge of the community by, helping ourselves, right? Instead of waiting for, Tudor or Rolex is never going to publish a list of all the serial numbers issued to the various militaries around the world for a number of reasons. We can put that together, a pretty good set of numbers on our own.
Yeah, put together like a common source.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, you see this sometimes in the car world. There's like a Porsche 912 registry where people are registering, and so it's kind of like that, but for French Navy issued watches. So I'm excited for that. It may take a year or more, but that's okay. This can be out there for a while, and I'll do a final call when we get close to shipping, and then if we get more, we'll do another volume. So I think it'll be something that I'm really excited to launch.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. And as you pointed out, I think there's always been an overlap between car guys and watch guys, speaking generally, boys and their toys. But I have a 2008 Mustang Bullet. I don't know if that fueled my interest in Steve McQueen style or reverse around the other way. It certainly inspired the colors of the channel. that Highland green, and there's a registry for bullet, Ford bullet owners and so forth. And having a central place for these watches that you're talking about, it gives the vector for keeping the tracking of its life alive, because it come out of the military with that paperwork, and with what you're doing, it's giving that next touch point to continue following these watches around.
Yeah, that's my hope. And I think it'd be fun. It would just be a beautiful community kind of sourced collection for all of us to enjoy.
Awesome. So question, in your original search for the watches, the watches you owned, did you ever trace it back far enough to get to the division, the unit, the actual owner from years prior? Did you ever stalk anyone and say, hey, I got your watch?
I haven't been able to trace it to a given individual. Okay. I know that people have. So there are probably like 5 or 6 different types of provenance available for these French Navy watches. Whether it's the watch itself, the actual engraving style is very peculiar. Whether it's the decommission paperwork that we talked about earlier, whether it's watchmaker service records, right, which are my favorite, that, this on the inside of the case back, there's these chicken scratches from the watchmaker. Well, that watchmaker kept really great records, and when he passed away, his detailed records, we call it the register, entered into private hands. And so now, if you happen to have a French Navy watch that was serviced by this watchmaker, and you can actually find out more about your watch, not only what he did to it, but which it was assigned to. And so that's about as deep as I've gotten in terms of this watch was used on the submarine named Augusta, right? Yeah. This commando unit. But some people have been able to buy the watches from the original divers, and they typically come with a little letter talking about the activities, how they received the watch, and you see these posted online sometimes, and they're written in French, of course, and it's awesome. So I don't have one of those, but that's probably the top form of provenance you can get. Tier.
So what we like to talk about on this channel is buying strategy and how to better inform that. And certainly having a book like this around and knowing that Scott's work is out there could help you. If you had to give some advice to someone who is on the verge of catching the bug of don't seek to follow in the footsteps of the Zen masters, seek what they sought, right? That's how the Zen koan goes. But what advice would you give to someone who maybe wants to track one of these pieces down? Like what direction would you point them in?
Yeah, I think the first thing is be a sheep. And what that means to me is that follow the herd. Go for the canonical MN issue watch that looks just like all the others, right? That checks as many of the boxes as the hallmark of an issued watch, right? So what that means is that get one that fits within a known serial range of watches issued to the French Navy. Get one that in its engraving style, on the back of the case, they typically engrave it MN for Marine Nationale and then the year of issue. Get one that the engraving style looks like a number of other examples that you can find on the web. That the bezel insert and the dial and the patina kind of match what you would expect. It doesn't look too fresh or too beaten. And the reason this is important to be a sheep and stay with the herd of what most MN watches look like is because then you have this kind of safety in numbers, right? That you're buying one that, again, fits within the middle of the pack. I think with any watch, particularly one where particularly valuable watches or lesser understood watches, there's certainly the opportunity for fakes, but also I think that I haven't seen too many just outright fakes of Marine Nationale watches, but what you get are outliers, right? They're away from the herd. It has a later dial or the engraving is a little bit different. And I'm not sure whether those are actual genuine or not, but I know that they're different. And it just, as
Right.
you move it, kind of a standard deviation away from the herd, you're kind of taking that risk on. And what I recommend is if this is your first one, just stick to the middle of the road and leave
Right.
those outlier ones to people that are willing, maybe like me, that are willing to take these outlier and, hey, there's a story there.
Yeah.
It could end in a dead end, or it could be that one-off example where they used a purple dial or whatever.
Right.
There's no purple dial,
with diamonds on it. Purple dial and diamonds.
yeah, but that's the kind of thing where I feel like, because the thing is, as you know, in the watch community, it's like, if you get burned, right, you're not coming back, right? And we're gonna miss out on that. So like, just do your homework as much as possible. And a lot of times what I see these days, well, I would say less fakes, but I see more ones where we're not sure. But if you pay like basically a civilian price, you're okay. You think of it as like you're buying a civilian watch with a lottery ticket attached, right? And then see what happens, right? And I've had a few of those watches. Sometimes I find out more, and then I know, I'm like, wow, that was a great purchase, right? Because this thing I paid a civilian price for actually turns out to have the military problem, right? Or if I buy one that I'm not sure about and I can't really resolve it, okay, at least I paid a civilian price, and that's okay. So that's my number one piece of advice, is kind of be a sheep.
Yeah. And then somewhat relative to that, because I've never seen them on eBay, I imagine they would either show up on Chrono24 or through well-known Tudor sellers on Instagram, or I don't know, some form of auction environment. What's the avenue? What's the vector to getting it?
So all of the above is where I've sourced mine from. The kind of the most readily approachable one is to go to dealers that traffic in these regularly, classicwatch.com. Zaf Basha has been selling MN watches for years, way before I got in. He supplied a number to other well-known collectors, and that's a great source. Plus, his website has a lot of historical, like they keep the listings up, and I would that when watch dealers do that, so you can do some research. Sometimes they include the price, sometimes they don't, but all his photos are still there, and so you can it's a great resource to start to compare.
Okay, let me get that information from you, that website of his, so I can add it to the description.
Yeah, and another dealer that sold a number of MNs, great, really beautiful ones over the years, is Oolong and Son. I think they're
I know that name.
Netherlands. They have some great straps and other accessories, and kind of a very, I would say, like, creative. I love their brand. Just very, like, they're watch, but they're watch adjacent, and they just love these vintage things and things with stories. And they've had a few of those watches too, with letters from the original sailor.
The owners.
So those are like some websites that you typically, and if you don't see one, you can always write them and say, hey, next time you get one of these, please think of me. Chrono24 typically has one or two for sale. Sometimes they're listed across platforms. Like I know there's a guy on Instagram selling one, but he's also got it listed on eBay. And so those are kind of like the main sites I'd go to, but Instagram over the years has become a great resource to source and to find out about MN watches for sale. Typically, if somebody's curious, they can always ping me too, and I have a fairly good sense of where watches are for sale. A lot of times people selling will reach out to me and say, hey, Scott, do you know of anybody looking to buy? And actually there's a match to be made.
Well, I was thinking, coming back to one of the other subjects, and then we'll wrap up shortly. I was thinking that if you ever wanted to try and track down one of those watches to its original owner as part of the next book, and so if you need someone to carry your bags around over in France, my French is a little rusty, but I'm good with a croissant, and I could be a good lackey, and so long as it's all expenses paid, I will carry your bags throughout the French countryside as we try to find those retired divers and maybe get some get some better input for the book, right? Why not?
Yeah. Hey, yes, me.
Yeah. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the program today, Scott, for sharing your journey, for sharing your knowledge. It's an absolute blessing to become friends with you, and looking forward to doing more projects with you as time allows. And what we like to do when we're watch yapping is, after I'm done with my yapping, I'd like to hand the microphone back to the guest to have the final word on today's episode. So the floor is yours. Feel free to promote one of your projects or whatever you'd like to talk about. The final word is yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Dee. I had a great time and hope we can do this again soon. Sure, I'll take you up on the chance to plug a few things.
Yeah.
One of the first books I did was on VRC, or vintage VRC watches. As I started to look for my first Marine Nationale watch, I kept coming up on the obscure watches called VRC that I hadn't seen, and their design language is unlike anything else out there, even to this day. And they were also used by the French Navy, but they had a ton of civilian watches that are just all different shapes and sizes, very unique. So check it out if you want to know more about vintage DRC watches. Also,
I actually have that book. My review of that book is forthcoming. I have it. I collect all of his stuff. He's got great stuff. So check it out.
Thank you. And then the last, of course, the Marine Nationale book here it is in its hardcover form. I think this page really kind of says it all to me, that when you look at the colors, the spectrum here of the watches, the front and back, right? There's just so many stories and just variation as to the French Navy watches that you just don't find with other militaries. I mean, even the UK Ministry of Defense, I mean, okay, they had the Rolex Milsub. There's a few variations, but nothing like the full spectrum of colors and brands that the French use, because they would typically source civilian watches. Just, go down to the local AD and buy a batch of 100 at a time for whatever seemed to fit the bill for their needs. So it resulted in just this great array of brands and just all sorts of different avenues to research. So those, and then of course the straps. We were started talking about the NDC straps. Like great watches, I actually feature their straps in my book. Some of the original period pieces of elastic that the sailors use. But I did a limited collaboration with NDC straps of 10 straps. And those sold out quickly. So we did another collaboration of 20 straps. At this time, we've got 7 left. So if you're interested in that, they've got a unique Watchistry logo branded on the buckle. So if you're interested in that, please check that out.
Awesome straps.
Yeah, I had a great time with you, Dee, and thank you so much for the encouragement. Ever since you first reached out about, I made this video about my journey in making the book, the actual nuts and bolts of how to make the book. Once you knew you wanted to make one, how do you actually do it? And I just had the stack there, and one day I was like, I'll do a quick video on just kind of, how I did it. And it was so heartwarming that you found it useful, and then not only useful, but you took some of those learnings and made your own book, which was really cool. And I was browsing through it the other day, and just some of the designs were I was like, yeah, okay, where can I buy it? Right, so,
well, thank you. It's very kind of you. Yeah, I remember I occasionally go back to watch his video about it, because I watched it and I went on my journey and I went back, and I think his sign off on the video is, "You can make a watch book too." I was like, "Can I?" It's it was so great, and you were so very kind to field my calls and emails, and it was just a real blessing to meet you.
I thank you. And actually, Brandon Cunningham did a watch book called "Selling the Crown." It's on the marketing history around Rolex, and he told me that, you can make a book too, also inspired him. So it's great to see that people are, because I think watch collectors, like, we have many stories in us, through whether it's our own stories or the stories we piece together from our collecting journey. And I think we should share them to inspire others.
Share the hobby. He brought it all the way back to the hobby of ours. Yours and mine and Scott and yours. This is a hobby of ours, with an O and with an H. Well, thank you again, sir. Absolute pleasure. And hopefully, God willing, not our last video together. Maybe I have to get me, you, and Jacko on a call. Figure out how to do to 3 watch nutters like us talking watches.
Yeah,
Why not?
that'd be fun.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him. All right, my man. Thank you for coming along on the ride. An absolute pleasure. And thank you for coming along on the ride as well. Hope that wherever you are in this wonderful, beautiful hobby of ours, that you are blessed. We will catch you in the next one. Peace. Pick up a book. 1001 Watch Designs, Volume 1. We've got line art, oil paintings, steampunk, and even super duper realistic ones. Ones that you could probably put on your wrist today. It's a good bit of fun and a great way to share your support. Thanks for coming along on the ride.